Thank you, dear. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. So just, I suppose, a few words about my background. So I actually was raised in Germany most of my life. My roots are from Afghanistan. That's where I was born. And I grew up here. And then at some point I went abroad. So I lived then for the last literally 16, 17 years abroad. And I've just been back recently. So, obviously, like English is just probably a little bit more, comes more naturally to me, just even when I'm kind of talking about professional topics and also presenting. So happy to answer any questions in German afterwards as well. Right, so starting out, so AILovesHR, just very few words. We do basically smart AI for a happier workplace. That's basically our mission. Without diving too deep into it, but the whole topic of values and fulfillment in careers is as much in a topic for an everyday person, as well as basically people that are within the corporate world and are, thank you, and are actually looking to, be in the right place and actually aligned with their values, because ultimately, value alignment is key to being personally fulfilled as well as professionally, okay? So over the last 18 years of my career, I've basically met countless people that have basically been suffering from, let's say, career dissatisfaction, okay? And for most part, it was because they had lost touch with their inner voice. I actually was one of them myself, okay? I remember having loads of uphill battles, for, things that I actually believed in and, going against my values partially as well, which were creativity, innovation, freedom to speak my mind. You're kind of like within a particular confines of where you basically have to see whether something fits with your values or not, right? And sometimes it led to strained relationships, right? To anxiety and sometimes even to burnout. But huge life lessons overall, right? So, finally, at some point, I did come out of my comfort zone. Obviously, one of the biggest things was fear that was holding me back as well. And, ultimately, I overcame it, right? And while I can tell you that, I suppose the life of an entrepreneur has loads of ups and downs. I'm sure some of you who are actually working for yourself basically are experiencing this. It does feel very energizing because you're ultimately following your calling. I suppose, one thing I think I would say is that comfort zone can feel safe, right? That's where a lot of us stay in the comfort zone. And feeling stuck sometimes can be more comfortable than being out there and actually trying to deal with the uncertainty, right? So that's why today, I'd like to talk about aligning the careers with the values, because it is such an important part of us being happy as people, right? Right, so when we come to this world, right, each of us at some point faces kind of a unique paradox, okay? So we are all born as unique beings. We are kind of one of a kind, right? So there's no two people that are the same in this world, right? Whether it's our DNA, our fingerprints, our perspectives, our heritage. I suppose, what happens then is we get schooled, right? So we go into school, and schools, with the best intentions, right, that they have, do encourage conformity, right, and standardization. So what happens is, say approaches that are more applicable to mass education get applied to everyone. So you end up basically thinking similarly, the same benchmarks get applied to the same people, so to everyone basically, and the whole one-size-fits-all solution ultimately does, to some degree, it does kill a bit the individuality, or at least suppresses it. So what happens is we grow up feeling disconnected as adults, disconnected from what makes us unique and ultimately what drives us truly, right? And that basically needs to be, let's say, rediscovered. So you have to almost kind of like, when at some point you want to go on this journey, it's a journey of rediscovery where you have to start peeling back the whole kind of layer of conformity and all of the kind of beliefs and values that you have, or not values, but beliefs that you have actually accumulated over the years, and reconnect with your unique strengths. So some of you might have heard of Robert Greene and his book Mastery. So there is a process he describes which basically leads us to the so-called life's task, which is a really important concept. So the life's task is basically your unique calling, okay? So it's the work you feel born to do, so the things that come naturally to you and that you're basically good at, right? And they are rooted in your earliest childhood inclinations generally. So that's how we can figure out, you know, what those things are actually, because everyone comes with unique inclinations to this world, right? So if you want to think about it, right, so just reflect on what activities absorbed you completely, right? Like what skills came naturally to you? Like maybe the early signs that you kind of recollect, you know, and they oftentimes are before we even go to school, right? So what were the things that maybe you got given out about, or, you know, what were the things that people cheering you at when you were doing, right, when you were a kid? Those are basically early signs. What happens is when you engage in those tasks, right, work doesn't feel like a burden, right? It becomes self-expression, right? So you do it naturally and it sits with you, right? So and as a result, you know, the more you use those skills, the more meaningful contributions you can do to the world. Right, so let's do a very quick exercise, right? So I'd like you all to take a moment, like 15, 20 seconds, right? And close your eyes for a second and take a breath in and just think back to a time when you were completely immersed in a task, okay? When you lost track of time and the work felt effortless and deeply satisfying. What were you doing and how did it feel? Go into that feeling for a second. So when you're ready, come back into the room. And now have a chat for literally a minute with the person sitting beside you and tell them what you basically thought about and what basically the task was. Es wird eine Minute.
Seite stellen.
Sorry, fine.
Ich dich auf die Seite stellen, weil du hast den Kindern frei. Hier muss ich dich gar nicht sehen.
Right, let's come back to the room. Guys, we continue. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, like, I'm sure with all this engaging conversation, you can obviously continue the chat about this after the presentation. But, like, how many of you were actually able to tap into a task that you actually thought about? Okay, right, so quite a few. Wonderful, wonderful. Right, so generally what happens is those tasks that you can think of where you felt effortless and felt basically deeply satisfied, immersed in it, those are the things that are very closely related to your life's task, okay? And it's worth actually exploring a bit deeper. So there are signs of misalignment, right, that you can watch out. So there's something called shadow careers that Robert Greene talks about as well. It's basically like a career that's similar to your calling, but not quite there. So an example is you have someone whose calling is maybe to be a novelist, but they become a journalist, right? So while they can write in that career, they might not be able to actually, satisfy their very creative urges, right? Because they are kind of writing within confines. Shadow careers, as a result, tend to feel unfulfilling, right? There's always something missing. It's a bit like, living two lives. So you basically have the one that pays the bills, and then the other one that's unlived, yeah? Which basically is our true desires at the end. So how do you know that you are in a shadow career potentially? So there's a couple of signs. So as I mentioned, so there is a kind of persistent dissatisfaction where you're good at your job, but there is something missing. There's a feeling that there could be something more. You are jealous of other people's work sometimes, or you kind of envy them. You think, oh my gosh, I wish I could do that too, right? I used to have that with interior design all the time. So that was just one of them. And then you have untapped potential, right? So you're in a job and you're capable of more, but somehow you cannot express your abilities within those confines. And then there's lack of flow, so you rarely experience moments of deep, effortless engagement at work, right? And there was actually one more that I'm thinking of right now is, the things that deplete your energy, right? So when you're working on something day in, day out, and it's really boring and monotonous, and it actually robs you energy rather than gives you energy, then that's probably a shadow career as well. Right, so authenticity is the next thing, right? So that's another critical element for a fulfilling career, right? So it is really a superpower, because, if you're not trying to fit into a mold, right, and not trying to be someone you're not, right, you end up freeing up enormous amounts of energy, right, and mental energy and emotional energy, right, which you can then redirect into the things that you love, right? So you can become more creative, more productive. Basically what happens is, ultimately you get valued, or you can get, let's say, praised for the things you're really authentic and good at, right? So it's yourself.
Einmal großen Applaus für Arzo Nadi.
Right. But it's not so long. Right.